Hey there. We borrowed them for tonight. Don't worry about it. It ain't gonna hurt your bed. We didn't call off a war because of rain, did we? Well, then don't worry about it. Nobody tell us where they want it. That's all we need. Don't tell us where to go. Yeah. That's what I got to get back, but huh? I just bought a flag that I was going to the port.
That's my law. Oh, I'm sorry.
See a flagger?
Hello. Now the concert came out, they don't start.
Good. Good job. Good.
Now I have to edit. I'm going to tell him.
Did you think you were going to have a monopoly on it just because you lived here this year?
I'm going to tell him who
Here
did
we
that.
go.
I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to tell him. It was Warren Wagner. They just put the paper in front of you. There. Get our picture. Wait, we oh, God, is this so good? Is this on TV? Oh, Sunday. You're never going to want to come over here, are you? Hey, Swiss. I'm not even going to come up to you anymore. I know, here she is. I'm not going near her.
Courtesy of Bill Miller and Tom Brannon, went in at about 5 o'clock. We're going to cheat on time a little bit, hopefully to beat the rain. At 6:59, the fire whistle will blow one blast. That gives you 60 seconds to get the flags up, your hands out of your pockets, and stop talking. This is the 11th national program that has been utilized throughout the year. Port Jervis has participated in 6 of these Flag Day programs. Back in '49, Flag Day was chartered. Then in 1982, the pause program was effected and chartered. In 1985, pause for the pledge, National Flag Day was made a law and signed by President Reagan. At 6:59, your whistle will blow once. We will take it over from there. The only change in our program, Catherine Simmons will not be here tonight. However, we knew there was a possibility she may not have been. So we went into Plan B. Plan B is that Clarence Edwards took her place. Now, Clarence was one of the multitude of military that made this place safe for us and gave us back our nice way of life. He was also a promoter and activator and designer of the city flag, which we are going to use tonight. When Clarence Edwards is through, Mrs. Doris Quick, the girl with the golden voice, will give you one verse of the national anthem, which you will join in, we hope. Then the mayor will take over, and then I can take a rest. 2 days ago, how can you synchronize a whole nation to pledge at 7 p.m.? You pledge in your time zone. Our daughter in Texas said that the class out there in the schools do it at 6 o'clock. And I have a relative that lives in the state of Washington. They do it at 4 o'clock. It's still the same time no matter where you go. It depends upon your time zone. It is synchronized with the program taking place down in Baltimore, Maryland at Fort McHenry, where this whole program originated. So there is no problem. We can do it for up to 8 or 9 hours right around the world and never be out of synchronization with them down there. All you grandparents want to bring out some of your pictures and show them to your neighbor and kill a few minutes this way. Stand by. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please all join me. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Now you will have the pleasure of our Mayor, Richard Roberts.
Thank you, Clarence, and good evening to everyone, and thank you for coming. As Clarence said, this is the 6th occasion that we've had to pause for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And I think in these times when obviously the Supreme Court has just ruled that it is legal and constitutional to burn the flag, it tells us all, and as I see our veterans here, we have school children, public officials, and citizens, I think it's each of our duty to teach all Americans the obligation that we have to be dedicated and to owe allegiance to our flag. We should be very proud and honored that we can do this in a free country such as this. At this time, I've been asked by President Bush to issue a proclamation which states, whereas by Act of Congress of the United States, dated June 14th, 1777, the first official flag of the United States was adopted. And whereas by Act of Congress dated August 3rd, 1949, June 14th of each year was designated National Flag Day. And whereas the Congress has requested the President to issue annually a proclamation designating the week in which June 14th occurs as National Flag Week, and whereas on December 8th, 1982, the National Flag Day Foundation was chartered to conduct educational programs and to encourage all Americans to pause for the Pledge of Allegiance as part of the National Flag Day ceremonies. And whereas the President of the United States, at the national ceremony held in Baltimore, Maryland on June 14th, 1985, led the Pledge of Allegiance, and whereas Flag Day celebrates our nation's symbol of unity, a democracy in a republic, and stands for our country's devotion to freedom, to the rule of all, and to equal rights for all, and whereas all American citizens have an obligation to show allegiance to our flag as a gratitude for the many privileges and freedoms it represents for everyone. Now therefore I, Richard K. Roberts, do hereby proclaim June 14th, 1990 as Flag Day in Port Jervis, New York, and urge all citizens of Port Jervis to pause at 7 p.m. on this date for the 11th annual Pause for the Pledge and recite with all Americans the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag and our nation. With that, earlier we've asked some of the youngsters to pass out to you the Masonic War Veterans pledge, I Am Your Flag. And this was read on Memorial Day at Orange Square by Jim Tooley, who represents Post 161 here in Port Jervis. I think if you just read that later this evening or at your leisure, it will always remind us of our flag and its meaning and its symbolism to the patriotism that we must adhere to in this nation if we're to stay a free nation and a democratic nation. At this time, I would like to call upon Peter Osborne, who we've asked to come down tonight and give a mini history, not a large history, Peter, but a mini history of the flag. So, Peter, please come forward.
Our nation's flag is a wonderful and powerful symbol. Its appearance has changed any number of times in the last 213 years since it was authorized by the Congress, and it's somewhat like our Constitution and our form of government. That is, it's been flexible, adaptable, and yet timeless. That symbolism is one of our nation's greatest strengths. It's also best represented in a little notice of law that was passed in 1787. It was called the Northwest Ordinance. It opened up the Midwest to the settlement by Americans from the East. And that law allowed for the orderly transition of the uncharted wilderness at that time into becoming territories and then allowing them later to become states in the Union, with equal status of the original 13 colonies. It was the first time in modern history that this peaceful acquisition and integration had been included in a constitution. And our flag represents very much that transition that has lasted for all these years. Our flag was authorized by the United States Continental Congress on June 14, 1777, when it resolved that, and I quote, "The flag of the United States be 13 stripes, alternate red and white, and the Union beat 13 stars to white on a blue field. The creation of the original design of the flag is a matter of great historical dispute, and no one really knows who designed the first U.S. flag. Very soon after the flag was adopted by the Congress, a U.S. congressman from Pennsylvania, Francis Hopkinson, declared that he had designed the flag. He was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, political leader, a judge, an artist, a musician, and a writer. However, in 1870, William J. Canby claimed that his grandmother had made the first U.S. flag, and she was Betsy Ross, a Philadelphia seamstress who had made flags for the government during the American Revolution. She was an expert seamstress, a widower with 7 daughters to support, and the story has always been told that George Washington, as part of a larger committee, stopped at her house and that she convinced George Washington and the committee to use 5 pointed stars instead of 6 pointed stars. To lend credence to this tradition over the years is the fact that she was the official flag maker of the Pennsylvania Navy, and her house in Philadelphia is still a National Historic Landmark, and there is much evidence to suggest that indeed she was the one who made the first flag. The choice of colors is also somewhat unknown. However, in 1782, the Congress chose the same colors for the flag as they chose for the Great Seal of the United States: red, white, and blue. The red to stand for hardiness and courage, according to the legislation. The white for purity and innocence. The blue for vigilance, perseverance, and justice. The choice of the design is another curious, to me at least, historical oddity. The stripes, of course, stand for the 13 original colonies, probably adopted from the Sons of Liberty flag that was used during the American Revolution. The stars, and the Congress did not specify how that they would be arranged, were used in various different combinations, in rows and circles. And there's no historical basis for the fact that some feel that each of the states was assigned a position because of its ranking in the original, in the layout of the states and their time of admission into the Union. There have also been many changes in the design of our flag over the years. In 1794, 2 new states joined the Union, and Congress changed the flag to add the 2 more stars and then 2 more stripes. In 1812, when the Star-Spangled Banner was written about this flag, it was the 15 stars and 15 stripes that Francis Scott Key wrote about. In 1817, 5 more states came into the Union, and the Congress realized quickly that they did not want to clutter the flag with more stripes, so they went back to the original 13 stripes, and then from that point forward decided to add 1 star for each state as it entered the Union. And also another curious tidbit, Congress ordered that a new star would be added to the flag on the July 4th that followed when the state entered the Union. And then curiously enough, the Congress never did set a design, so that flag makers all over America adopted their own styles. And so many American flags, at least for the first 100 and so years of our nation's existence, designed the flag in whatever way that they thought was right. It was not until really this century, in this part of the century, that presidents now have begun to dictate the designs of flags. During the Civil War, Lincoln refused to eliminate the stars of southern states and kept them on the flag. And the flag added 2 stars during that time as new states came into the Union. And for at least a 4-year period from 1908 to 1912, when there was a 46-star flag, there was 3 or 4 different designs used by flag makers around the country. It was not until 1912 when William Howard Taft set the regulations that are now used in terms of the heights, the length, the widths, and the dimensions, and that was when there was a 48-star flag, and then in 1959 there was a 49 state, and then in 1960 there was a 50 state. For those of you who are curious about the names that our flag has acquired over the years, it was called, of course, the Stars and Stripes. The origin of that name is still unknown to historians. The Star-Spangled Banner, as it's called now, was of course from Francis Scott Key's anthem. And Old Glory comes from a William Driver, who was a sea captain in Salem, Massachusetts, who called it that in 1824. And so as you can see, our nation's symbol has a long and colorful history. It's remained a powerful symbol, and that can best be seen by the recent turmoil during the episodes of the flag burning. And in that light, I'd like to share just a few lines of a poem by John Greenleaf Whittier about an old woman who defied Stonewall Jackson's army during the Civil War and who kept the Stars and Stripes flying. Up from the meadows rich with corn, clear in the cool September morn, the clustered spires of Frederick stand, green-walled by the hills of Maryland, Round about them orchards sweet, apple and peach tree fruited deep. Fair is the garden of the Lord to the eyes of the famished rebel horde. On that pleasant morn of the early fall when Lee marched over the mountain wall. Over the mountains winding down, horse and foot into Fredericktown, 40 flags with their silver bars, 40 flags with their crimson bars. Flapped in the morning wind, the son of noon looked down and saw no one. Up rose old Barbara Fritchie then, bad with her 80 years and 10. Bravest of all in Fredericktown, she took up the flag that the men hauled down. In her attic window the staff she set, to show that one heart was loyal yet. Up the street came the rebel tread, Stonewall Jackson riding ahead. Under his slouched hat left and right, he glanced, the old flag met his sight. Halt! The dust-browned ranks stood fast. Fire! Out blazed the rifle blast. It shivered the window pane and sash, it rent the banner with seam and gash. Quick as it fell from the broken staff, Dame Barbara snatched the silken scarf. She looked far out on the windowsill and shook it forth with a royal will. Shoot if you must this old gray head, but spare your country's flag, she said. A shade of sadness, a blush of shame, over the face of the leader came. The nobler nature within him stirred to light at that woman's deed and word. Who touches a hair on yon gray head dies like a dog. March on, he said. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I think everyone can see why Peter, representing the Minnesink Valley Historical Society, is also our city historian. And every time we call on Peter, he comes forward and comes through for us. Next on the agenda, if we can beat the rainstorm, I would just like to say that we in Port Jervis are very, very lucky to have our own city flag. And in 1982, it was the brainstorming of Clarence Edwards, who was then on the Heritage Commission, and we were preparing for our Diamond Jubilee. And he says, I think Port Jervis has gone 75 years without its own flag, so we must design one so it would always stand in the council room. So Clarence, could you come forward and tell us a little bit about the flag?
The official flag of the city of Port Jervis was designed by all of the members of the Port Jervis Area Heritage Commission and the Port Jervis Diamond Jubilee Commission under the direction and guidance of the then city historian, Mrs. Irene Hoppy, and co-chairpersons, Mayor Richard K. Roberts and the late Mrs. Betty Jane Polanas. After 6 months of suggestions, changes in colors, designs, and inscriptions thereon, the flag in its present form was manufactured by the Valley Forge Flag Company through the sponsorship of the Minnesink Valley Historical Society. It was presented to our city during Flag Day ceremonies, chaired then by Harold McGovern, in the 75th Diamond Birthday year of Port Jervis, 1982, and accepted by then Mayor E. Arthur Gray on behalf of the citizens of our beautiful city of Port Jervis. The many points on the flag are as follows. The city seal on top of Mount William, Point Peter, and the American flag, Temple Bethel Cemetery in gold, the Delaware and Hudson Canal, the Erie Railroad, the Roundhouse, Orange Square, Veterans Park, City Hall, the Fire Department, Fort Decker, the Delaware River, the bridge, the toll house, the Erie Depot, the Port Jervis Monticello Railroad, as we know it, the O&W, the Neversink River, St. Mary's Cemetery, Laurel Grove Cemetery, and Tri-States Rock. The green background, at the suggestion of Mayor E. Arthur Gray at the time, that's how he said, that's how our forefathers found the valley. Beautiful green. And that's our Port Jervis City flag, incorporated July 26, 1907. Thank you.
Thank you, Clarence. Some of you might remember that Flag Day ceremony in 1982. It was a day similar to this, The only thing, we had torrential rains from the minute we woke up in the morning, and we had planned the ceremony to take place at Gwinnett Field, and Bus McGovern had, I think, invited about 1,000 or more spectators who were also going to participate. Cub Scout groups from the city, veterans, firemen, citizens, church groups. So when we woke up in the morning, I get a call from from Bus McGovern. He said, "I think we've got to move it inside." I says, "No problem." And he says, "Well, what are we going to do with the grand finale?" Because we were supposed to have Mahagamok hook and ladder on the football field, and the grand finale was going to be, I believe it was Doris Quick was going to sing "God Bless America," and the flag was going to go up the ladder, and that was going to be the end of our ceremony. But we improvised, and another fire company, Fives from West End, came down, and they carried the flag out, and we put it on the backdrop of the auditorium stage, and we raised it up that way and still had a great program. So we were luckier this day than we were that day with the rain. The next introduction I'd like to make is Irene Hobby, who is representing the Bicentennial Commission, who was, at the time of its formation, was chaired by Alma LaRue, and other members included Martin DeMond, Don Marsh, Clarence Edwards, John Russell, George Roman, Randall Caulfield, Mary Lou Laidley, Mayor Gray was on it, Janice Brown, and Clarence Coswick. One of their projects, when the group was formed, was to designate this area as Constitutional Square, and it's now on the official letterhead of the city, and we call ourselves number 1 Constitutional Square. And if you go to the 4 corners, you'll see the cornerstones that are laid there representing our nation's history. But one of the things that they wanted to do, and Irene, as the treasurer, so greatly raised the money to relocate this flagpole and do the monument that we're going to unveil tonight and dedicate to that bicentennial group. So Irene, could you come up and tell us a little bit of how you raised the money? And again, Irene is our former city historian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you don't get too wet while I talk. But to me, this has been one of my babies. At one of the meetings of the Constitution Bicentennial, it was suggested that why can't the city of Port Jervis have a Constitution Square? So we decided this would be it. And it's on the corners, and we're very happy. I'm very happy about it now, and glad tonight that we'll have the unveiling. In order to raise the money, we wrote letters to associations and to industry. We skipped the retailers for a change. We could feel they get it often enough. But I was very, very fortunate in having all the replies to the tune of $2,880. I would like at this time to give credit. In the first place, we wanted to have a sign outdoors with all the names on it. But due to weather, due to vandalism, we figured it would be a waste. So as you go in City Hall, on the right, in the hall, is a complete listing of all of the donors. And it's under glass as you go into the city clerk's office. However, I do want to give credit to where credit is due, because really, it was a very nice sum. We were able to pay for all the markers, and I still have a balance that I'm going to also spend. This building is going to be number 1 Constitution Square, and the sign will be made and put up. We have Rosa Fleming Post, we have Bernie Carroll Auto Sales, we have A&W Products, we have Skyline Incorporated, we have Comer Laboratories, we have BPW of Port Jervis, we have Ed Smith Auto Sales, North Star Bank, Rotary Club, Kiwanis Club, Wilder Manufacturing, Knight Funeral Home, Gray Funeral Home, Key Bank, C&D Power Systems, the Elks Club 645, Port Jervis Senior Citizen Club, and the Tri-State Naval Ship. And we raised a very nice sum of money. money for Constitution Square. If Washington and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania can have Constitution Square, so can Port Jervis, New York. And we're real thrilled with it. So I'm very happy to see this become a reality. And I thank you for being here. I hope you don't have to stand too long in the rain. Thank you for coming.
What this is the preamble to the Constitution. And as you know, if you read the preamble, it states the 6 goals of our nation. So we're very, very proud and very thankful to your group for this. So, anything else? The rest of the program, Clarence Edwards is going to introduce our clerk.